Okay, let's unpack this. 1959, it might sound like, well, just another year, right?
Huh?
But you, our listener, pointed us towards something really fascinating. It's like this weird intersection.
Yeah, you've got 1959 game theory concepts floating around and Bitcoin. It seems like a stretch at first glance.
Totally. So we're looking at a pivotal moment for some new technologies, ideas that were just starting. Groundwork, really.
Groundwork for things that are huge today. And then there's this whole rabbit hole with the number 59 itself.
Exactly. So our mission, basically, is to dive into these connections you sent over. See what links 1959, its tech shifts, early transhumanist thoughts.
And the number 59, maybe even connecting to Bitcoin or, ancient stuff like the pyramids.
Right. See if we can find some surprising insights. So let's start with 1959, setting the scene. It feels like a year where seeds were planted.
Definitely. Take cryptography. 1959 was when the U.S. military retired the SIGABA cipher machine.
SIGABA. Okay, what was that?
It was a big deal. A really complex electromechanical rotor machine used heavily in World War II. Very secure for its time.
So retiring it was symbolic.
Yeah.
The end of an era.
Exactly. It marked this shift, this move away from the mechanical towards, well, the future, towards electronic, more advanced encryption.
And that path leads, eventually,
Yeah.
to things like crypto.
Pretty much. I mean, the need for secure communication only got bigger, right?
I mean,
The thinking behind breaking codes and making new ones, that evolved. And that evolution, the math, the concepts, they're the foundations for the digital security we rely on now. Think online banking, secure messaging.
And cryptocurrencies,
Yeah,
like Bitcoin.
absolutely. So 1959 is like a waypoint on that journey towards today's crypto method.
Okay, interesting. So cryptography is evolving.
Yeah.
What else was happening in 59? You mentioned computing, Moore's law.
Yeah, Gordon Moore. Around 1959, maybe a bit earlier, he made this observation. It wasn't even a law yet, just noticing something.
Noticing what?
That the number of transistors you could cram onto an integrated circuit seemed to be doubling pretty regularly, like every year or so back then.
Doubling. That sounds exponential.
It was. And that observation, later formalized as Moore's law doubling roughly every 2 years, became this like self-fulfilling prophecy for the semiconductor industry.
And that exponential growth in computing power. That's crucial, right?
Foundational. You can't have things like Bitcoin mining, which is incredibly computationally intensive.
Feeds tons of power.
Right. Or the complex algorithms and game theory applications, or just running a modern blockchain. None of that happens without the kind of power increase Moore saw starting.
It's like the engine getting built piece by piece back then.
Exactly. A quiet revolution in microelectronics.
Okay, so we've got crypto evolving, computing power starting to explode. What about the transhumanist angle? That seems like a leap from circuits and codes.
Well, it's more about the mindset of the era, maybe. Late 50s, early 60s. There was this real technological optimism.
The space race vibe.
Sort of, yeah. But also thinkers starting to seriously consider, like, radical life extension. Using technology to overcome fundamental human limits.
Wow, okay, so not just flying to the moon, but changing what it means to be human.
The seeds of that idea, definitely. The conceptual groundwork for what we now call transhumanism. This belief that science and tech could radically improve us.
How does that connect to crypto, though? Seems worlds apart.
It's maybe a shared intellectual ancestor,
Okay.
like this deep faith in technology to bring about radical change.
Ah, okay. Like a techno-utopian streak.
Exactly. You see it in those early transhumanist ideas, technology solving death itself. And you see echoes of it later in the crypto and blockchain communities.
The idea that code and decentralization can fix societal problems, create new systems.
Right. That same underlying belief in innovation as the catalyst for transformation. Different goals, maybe, but a similar spirit.
So 1959. It's not just about hardware. It's about a shift in thinking, too. The old ways, like SIGABA, giving way to the new crypto, faster computers, even radical new ideas about humanity's future.
Yeah, laying the groundwork, mathematically, technologically, even philosophically, perhaps.
Which brings us, fascinatingly, to the number 59 itself. You said it's the 17th prime number.
It is, divisible only by 1 and 59.
And primes are important.
Yeah.
Why again? Cryptography.
Hugely important. The difficulty of factoring large numbers into their prime components is like the bedrock for a lot of encryption systems. Not Bitcoin's main system now, which uses elliptic curves, but fundamental to the field.
Okay. And you mentioned 59 is a safe prime. What's that about? Sounds secure.
Hey, it kind of is. A safe prime P is one where P12 is also prime. So for 59, that's 59 to 12 equals 29, and 29 is prime.
Okay. And why is that structure useful?
It makes certain cryptographic protocols, especially those based on something called the discrete logarithm problem, more resistant to some attacks. It adds a layer of mathematical robustness.
So it's a specific kind of prime with extra security features built in, mathematically speaking.
You got it. And 59 also has these other fun prime relationships, like being part of a twin prime pair with 61.
I mean, they're primes separated by 2.
Yep. And a sexy prime pair with 53.
Okay, wait. Sexy prime.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a real term. Means primes separated by 6. Just mathematicians having a bit of fun, but it points to how primes cluster together sometimes.
Right. Always patterns in math.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned some deeper number theory stuff. Multiplicative order, primitive roots. Sounds complex.
Like, it's a bit abstract, yeah. The multiplicative order of 10 modulo 59 is 58. That means 10 to the power of 58 leaves a remainder of 1 when you divide by 59, and no smaller power does that.
Okay.
And related to that, 10 is a primitive root modulo 59, so are 2, 6, 8, and 11.
Primitive root, meaning?
It means you can generate all the numbers from 1 up to 58 just by taking powers of 10 or 2 or 6, etc., and finding the remainder when divided by 59. It kind of spans the whole set of remainders.
And why does that matter?
Again, it relates to the structure of numbers modulo a prime, which is really important for crypto systems based on that discrete logarithm problem we mentioned. The existence of primitive roots is key to how they work.
It's wild how these abstract number properties underpin so much real-world security.
It really is. And then you get these weird connections, like 59 stellations of the regular icosahedron.
Stellations, like making star shapes out of it?
Kind of, yeah. Different ways to extend the faces of the icosahedron to form new polyhedra. There happen to be 59 ways to do it according to certain rules, a link to geometry.
And it's not constructible with a compass and straight edge, a 59-sided shape.
Nope. That ties into deeper algebraic results about which regular polygons can be constructed. Primes play a role there too, specifically Fermat primes. 59 isn't one of those.
So 59 pops up in geometry, number theory, even science, right? Atomic number 59.
Praseodymium? Yep. A lanthanide element. Used in alloys, magnets, coloring glass.
Just a coincidence, presumably, the number.
Almost certainly just a coincidence that the 17th prime is also an atomic number, but it's a neat one. Shows how numbers are labels everywhere.
Okay, so now, connecting 59, Bitcoin, and pyramids. This feels like where we might need our tinfoil hats.
Haha, maybe a little. It's important to stress these are mostly symbolic connections or like numerical coincidences, not direct causation.
Got it. Speculative territory.
Right. So we know primes like 59 are generally important for crypto, the foundation Bitcoin is built on. That's the most solid link, conceptually.
Okay. What about the pyramids?
Well, there's this thing called the Rhind Papyrus, an ancient Egyptian math text. And problem 59a in that papyrus is about calculating the slope, or sect, of a pyramid.
Problem 59. Seriously.
Problem 59. It's purely a coincidence, of course, but it's a fun one, linking the number to ancient mathematical interests in those structures.
Wild. And you mentioned a symbolic link, pyramids and blockchain stability.
Yeah, just the idea of something built layer by layer, strong, enduring, like a pyramid. The blockchain aims for that kind of immutability and permanence.
A tamper-proof structure.
Exactly. And, you know, we should probably address the whole pyramid scheme thing that sometimes gets thrown at Bitcoin.
Oh, right, because it sounds similar.
Yeah, but it's a fundamental misunderstanding. A pyramid scheme relies entirely on recruiting new people to pay earlier ones. Bitcoin has actual utility, scarcity, a technological function. It's not the same thing at all. The structure is completely different.
Good distinction. Okay, so beyond the coincidences in the structural metaphor, are there deeper, more esoteric connections people make with 59? You mentioned a rabbit hole.
Oh, absolutely. If you dive into numerology, mysticism, stuff like that, 59 gets interpreted in some really interesting ways, often related to transition, spirituality, even eternal life.
Eternal life. Okay, how does that work in numerology?
Well, one common way is reducing numbers. 5 plus 9 equals 14. Then 1 plus 4 equals 5.
Okay.
5 is often seen as the number of like change, freedom, adventure, the human experience. And 9 represents completion, humanitarianism, spiritual wisdom. So 59 is sometimes read as this journey from the dynamic, changing 5 foot towards the spiritual completion of 9.
A path towards enlightenment, maybe?
Sort of. Or self-realization. Affinity numerology apparently sees 59 as dynamic, adaptable, linked to curiosity.
Yeah.
pushing towards that higher understanding.
Interesting. What about religious or mystical traditions?
Yeah, bits and pieces pop up. Some point to biblical figures like King Jehoshaphat dying around 59 or Paul's imprisonment near that age, interpreting them as symbolic transitions.
Turning points.
Right. And Psalm 59 itself, it's a prayer for deliverance, moving from fear to trust in the divine. That journey can be seen as a metaphor for the soul finding eternal peace. Then there are like the 59 promises said to be given by the Virgin Mary in certain traditions, connected to spiritual graces and protection, touching on eternal realities. There's a specific rosary related to this too.
Wow, okay. It weaves through a lot of different areas. Kabbalah.
Gematria.
Yeah. In gematria, where letters have numerical values, some Hebrew words summing to 59 are relevant, like lit, meaning to wish ardently, linking to the soul's yearning.
Or Boaz, from the Book of Ruth, also 59. He represents strength, which could be interpreted as the strength needed for spiritual ascent. Some even connect 59 conceptually to Yesod, the sephira that bridges the spiritual and material.
It's like a nexus point in some interpretations.
Kind of. And then you have modern things like angel numbers.
Angel number 59. What's the message there?
Usually interpreted as a sign of big spiritual changes coming, like time to ditch old habits, embrace spiritual awakening, make profound shifts in your life path.
Dissolving the old, building the new.
Exactly, which actually ties nicely into the I Ching, hexagram 59.
Hexagram 59. What's that one?
It's called Huan, meaning dispersion or dissolution. The image is wind over water, the wind scattering the water.
Dispersion. Scattering.
Right. The advice is often about dissolving barriers, misunderstandings, illusions, ego boundaries to connect with deeper wisdom or community. It's about letting things flow, breaking up stagnation.
And it sounds transformative.
Very. And you can see how that theme of dispersion and renewal could be symbolically linked to the soul's release or journey towards, eternal unity or dissolution into the divine.
Like letting go of the temporary.
Exactly. You found that quote from the Gnostic Book of Changes.
Yeah. All things are supple when alive and hard only when dead. It fits that idea of letting go of rigidity.
And that book itself, the Gnostic Book of Changes, is basically an esoteric rereading of the I Ching through a Gnostic Jungian lens, focused on inner alchemy and transformation. So it fits.
And you mentioned a rosary earlier.
The Seven Sorrows Rosary, specifically, it has 59 beads. And one of the traditional promises associated with devotion to Mary's sorrows involves protection from sudden, unprepared death, another link to transition and the eternal.
It just keeps weaving through. Any other threads? Alchemical.
Well, some more esoteric links get made, like 59 is the 17th prime. 17 is sometimes linked to the star tetrahedron, the Merkaba in mystical traditions. Ideas about light body activation.
Okay, that's pretty deep.
Yeah. And a more metaphorical one, praseodymium, atomic number 59, is used in strong alloys for aircraft engines. So you could see that as a symbol for refining the soul for celestial flight. A bit poetic, obviously.
Definitely poetic.
Yeah.
But it all paints 59 as this number of transition, dissolving old forms, maybe communion with something bigger.
That seems to be the common thread in these symbolic interpretations, yeah. From fear to trust, from illusion to wisdom, from the mundane to the spiritual.
Wow. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. We started way back in 1959.
Right. A year that saw the end of one cryptographic era with SIGABA and the acceleration of computing with Moore's law observations.
Seeds being planted for the digital world, for Bitcoin's underlying tech.
And also those early, maybe optimistic, transhumanist ideas about technologically overcoming limits.
Then we jumped into the number 59 itself. A prime number, a safe prime, with all these interesting mathematical properties relevant to cryptography.
Properties like its multiplicative order, being a primitive root modulo 10, connections to geometry.
And then the more speculative links. The Rhine papyrus coincidence, the pyramid structure metaphor for blockchain.
Debunking the pyramid scheme myth.
Right. And finally diving deep into numerology, mysticism, the I Ching, where 59 consistently emerges as this symbol of transition, dispersion, spiritual seeking.
It's quite a journey you sent us on. From hard tech history to abstract math to deep esoteric symbolism.
It really shows how these seemingly unconnected dots, sometimes they do connect or at least resonate in surprising ways. Hopefully you found some aha moments in there.
Yeah, it's fascinating how exploring these different lenses, historical, mathematical, symbolic, can reveal layers you wouldn't see otherwise.
Absolutely. It really underscores how much depth can be hidden in unexpected places.
Definitely makes you look at numbers and history a bit differently.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. We saw how 1959 hinted at exponential technological growth. As that growth continues, maybe even accelerates, how might our understanding of really basic things like numbers, like security, maybe even like life and consciousness, how might that understanding keep evolving in ways we can't even predict right now? That's a big question. Where does this path, started back then, ultimately lead?
Exactly. Keep exploring those connections. You never know what you'll uncover.